Part 1. Pillar motorist died. The consequence of the assault that changes everything. Hey guys, welcome back to the World Now channel. Today is Wednesday, July 8th, 2026, and Chapter 44 of Quem, Cuida arrives with a sequence of revelations that will leave the public glued to the screen from start to finish. Yesterday you saw the robbery happen. Pilar and her driver were approached and forced out of the car. Today you're going to see the of that robbery, and they're more serious than anyone expected. Ulysses announces to Pilar that his driver died after the robbery. Folks, the driver couldn't resist. One person lost his life in a crime that happened while Pilar was in the car. A person who was doing his job, who was serving a schedule, who had nothing to do with the crimes and betrayals of the village, and now she's not here anymore. Pilar's reaction to this news will say a lot about who she is, because Pilar is not a daughter who feels easy guilt. She operates in crisis management mode. What does that change in my plans? What do I need to do now? What is the impact of this on my position? Isabel Teixeira will have to deliver here one of the most revealing moments of how a person who orchestrated such elaborate crimes and frames processes the death of someone innocent who was just fulfilling a role alongside her. And it's not just the death of the driver that Pilar will have to manage. There's something that comes with this news that is even more threatening. The driver's cousin shows up with blackmail. The victim's cousin threatens to tell about Pilar's pending requests if she doesn't give him a reward. Namely, the robbery that appeared to be just another urban crime has turned into a trap. One person died, and a relative of that person knows about Pilar that, if it comes out, could be the beginning of the end of his daughter. This bow is one of the most electrifying of the second phase, because for the first time it is Pilar who is being blackmailed. During the first phase, she was the one threatening, the one buying, the one using power against vulnerable people. And now she sees herself in the position of someone who has a secret to protect and a menacing person to negotiate with. That's poetic justice in the best way. Let's remember who is who in this story. Pilar's her brother Arthur Brando's fortune after having orchestrated Adriana's conviction. She takes over the house, takes over the business, takes over the influence. And all this with Adamir's connivance, with the bought witness, Tom, and with the complicity of the system that she knew how to use to her advantage. Every brick in this castle was built pain of an innocent, and now a crime that happened in your own driver's way could be the first stone that will all fall apart. Amora Mautner's artistic direction will film this sequence of revelations with the precision that is the hallmark of this second phase. It is not excessive melodrama. They are scenes of tense realism, where every word is calculated and each reaction reveals more than speech itself. Gancho. Pilar's driver is dead, and a relative of the victim is already blackmailing the old woman. But there's something going on in parallel that involves Pedro and his cell phone, and when Bruna shows up in the wrong place, at the wrong time, she'll see something that will set this second phase on fire. What happened? What did Bruna see, and how did she react? Part 2 tells it all. Part 2. Bruna appears in the coat with P's cell phone, and what she sees changes everything. We're back with Part 2 here in the World Now, and now we're going to talk about one of the most charged scenes with romantic tension and dramatic possibility in today's entire chapter. A scene that is born from something small, a forgotten cell phone, and that turns into a moment that can change the course of several relationships at the same time. Pedro kept the cell phone at home, and Bruna took the device to her husband at the shelter. Sounds simple, doesn't it? And the most common thing in the world. The person replaces the cell phone, the spouse goes to the place where the person is to deliver. It happens in thousands of families every day. But here, in this story, the shelter where Pedro is working as a volunteer is the same place where Adriana is also volunteering. Bruna, lived by Nanda Marquez, arrives at the shelter and sees Pedro and sees Adriana. And she sees the two together in a space she didn't know, doing something she didn't know, with a person who represents everything they fear most in their own love story. Let's stop here and understand what this scene means emotionally. Bruna spent the first phase of the entire novel believing she could win Pedro back, that his love for Adriana was temporary, that when Adriana left, life would return to normal. She married Pedro, a marriage Andre has already identified as half-hearted on his side. And now, in a banal gesture of taking her forgotten cell phone, she finds the woman who never ceased to be a shadow in that relationship. What is Bruna going to do with what she saw? In the next chapters, this answer will appear very strongly. Chapter 50, which comes next week, will show Bruna demanding that Adriana stay away from Pedro, and Mau telling Pedro that Bruna went to his house to provoke Adriana. That is, going to the shelter today is the trigger for a series of Bruna's behaviors that will escalate in the coming days. Chase Wade will have to balance something very specific in this scene. Being present to Adriana, being aware that Bruna has appeared and not revealing everything she feels. Because Pedro knows the situation is complex. He is married. He declared to Adriana that he has not given up investigating Arthur's death. But neither can you simply leave your wife standing there while standing next to another woman. Natalia Dill is not at this scene, is not part of this shelter. But the mystery around her, which was momentarily paused by the events of the last chapters, will return soon. The chapters of the week of the 11th confirm that Otoniel still misses, and that will become one of the most delicate threads of the second phase. Gancho. Bruna appeared at the shelter and saw Pedro with Adriana. The situation is already tense, but there is a scene from this chapter that involves Adriana and the biggest emotional bomb from the second phase so far. Adriana finds out that Pedro married Bruna. What reaction did she have? How will that change her plans for revenge? And what did Maurizio do that he shouldn't have done? Part 3 reveals everything. Part 3. Adriana discovers P's wedding and is destroyed. The dinner that Brazil will not forget. We got to part 3 here in the world now. And now we're going to talk about the most emotionally impactful scene of all of chapter 44. A scene that many people were waiting to happen, and that when it happens it hurts in a way that only those who really watch can feel it. Adriana is shocked to find out that Pedro has married Bruna. 6 years. Adriana spent 6 years inside prison. She lied that she didn't love Pedro to protect him from Pilar. She told Kleber to convince Pedro to move on. She built walls around her own love to ensure he was safe. And now, outside, free, she discovers that the man she always loved went ahead, literally, with the other woman. What Adriana knew or didn't know about Pedro's marriage is one of the most important elements of this scene. From what the officials show, she discovers this. She is shaken to find out that Pedro has married, suggesting that this revelation comes to her as a real surprise, or at least a friendship that she was still processing. And her finishing is not just romantic pain, and the collision between the sacrifice she made and the consequence of that sacrifice. Adriana asked Kleber to help Pedro forget her. She said she didn't love him. She pushed him away in every possible way. And Pedro, who is human, who has limits, who cannot wait forever for a woman who said she didn't want to see him anymore. Pedro went ahead. This is not betrayal. It is consequence. And that madness is what makes Adriana's pain even more difficult to process. Letitia Collin will deliver here one of the most demanding scenes of the second phase. Because Adriana can't afford to completely fall apart. She's on parole, she has legal obligations, she has a revenge project that needs lucidity and strategy. But the heart doesn't ask permission. And in this scene, Adriana's heart will speak louder than any plan. And this is where we stop to make the special salvo of the world now. Because our last video was absolutely amazing in the comments, and we need to recognize these beautiful guys. Tatiana Coelho Pires, 38, a social worker from São Paulo, SP, has been accompanying us for 6 months. You transformed my relationship with the soap opera. Before I only watched it, now I understand what's going on. Tatiana, how beautiful. Huge hello. Julia Rebecca Santos, 22 years old, law student of Natal, RN, follows us from the beginning. I attend your narrations to train how to talk about legal issues with emotion. Best class I ever had. Julia, that moved us. Strong hug. And Walmir Jose Almeida, 55 years old, a merchant from Uberlandia, MG, who has been with us for 3 months. I had never watched soap operas in my life. My granddaughter showed me this channel, and now I'm a fan of Quem ama Cuida. You're Valmir. That's the highest compliment. A loving hug. Gencho. Adriana found out that Pedro got married and was shaken. But who encouraged her to open her heart to this feeling? What did Maurizio do today that will create more tension in the next chapters? And what did Pedro confess to Bruna that proves that their marriage is in its last legs? Part 4 unveils everything. Part 4. Adriana incentive. Maurice and PE talks with Adriana in the housing. The tension that does not stop. Part 4 in the world now. And now we're going to enter the 2 parallel movements that create the highest level of romantic and emotional tension in today's chapter, encourages Adriana to tell Pedro why he left the lawyer. This is one of the kindest and at the same time most complicated moments of the chapter. Lived by João Victor Gonçalves and Elisa's husband, Otoniel's son-in-law, Adriana's brother-in-law in practical life. He has been in an emotional support role since Adriana got out of prison. And he is realizing with all the sensitivity that only those who watch from the outside can have, that there is something between Adriana and Pedro. Mauricio's incentive is genuine. He is not manipulating. He is saying, truth sets free. If Pedro only knew that Adriana left because of Pilar's threat, for fear that he would be the next victim, and not because of lack of love, the scenario would be completely different. Sees this, and he tries to convince Adriana to have this conversation, but Adriana is not ready yet. She has legitimate reasons for caution. Pedro is married to Bruna. Messing with this marriage with the truth of the past is a huge responsibility. She doesn't want to be the woman who comes from outside to undo a relationship, even if that relationship is, as Andre has already diagnosed, a marriage without enthusiasm. And while Adriana's internal was ongoing, the shelter was the scene of a conversation between Adriana and Pedro, which the sources confirm. Adriana and talk about the past. This, which comes after yesterday's meeting, the unexpected reunion in the same volunteer space, and the type of dialogue that carries decades of meaning in each sentence. And when Pedro warns Adriana that he still hasn't given up finding out who killed Arthur, he is saying much more than an investigative statement. He's saying he didn't go in front of the truth. Chase Wade and Letitia Collin in this scene, and what the audience expects to see in each chapter of the second phase. Two actors who built these characters with real depth over more than 40 chapters, who know the weight of each word that is said, and who can communicate feelings that the characters are not verbalizing, and that we will not forget. Ulysses earns money in the game, and Lyris, who works as a waitress in the casino, advises him to stop playing. Lyris, lived by Pry Helena, who was Adriana's ally in prison, who went free and now works as a waitress, finds Ulysses in a space that is the epicenter of his addiction, and instead of ignoring it, she goes to find it. She advises. That's Lyris's corpse being used very smartly by the criminal. She's not just a released ex-inmate. She is a moral presence within several arcs of the novel. Gancho encouraged Adriana. Pedro and Adriana talked about the past at the shelter. Lyris found Ulysses at the casino. But there's one scene that hasn't appeared yet, the one that will make the audience jump off the couch. Bruna arrived at the shelter. She saw Pedro with Adriana. And what happened after that? You're going to define all of next week. And what will the blackmail of Pilar provoke again in her daughter's plans? Part 5 tells it all. Part 5, the ing for Pilar and what comes in this week's sequence. Part 5, here in the world now. And now we're going to talk about how the arcs in this chapter connect with what's coming days. Because chapter 44 is not a chapter of resolutions, it's a chapter of new problems being created at the same time that the old ones still exist. Pilar's driver's cousin threatens to tell about his daughter's pending requests if she doesn't receive a reward. This is one of the smartest plots of Phase 2, because it puts Pilar in a blackmail position, without Adriana and Pedro having to do anything. The very of Pilar's crimes came back like a boomerang, but those who know Pilar know. She won't just pay and end the matter. She will calculate. It will analyze how much of this threat poses as a real risk. It will consider options that most people wouldn't even consider. And he will probably try to resolve this situation in a way that neutralizes the threatening, without needing to expose more than is already exposed. Isabel Teixeira is going to have to show a Pilar under pressure here, and that Pilar under pressure who is more dangerous than Pilar in control. When she is being harassed, when the exits are decreasing, she does not retreat. She attacks faster. Tomorrow, Thursday, chapter 45. Adriana is disappointed in Pedro. Tom is hostile towards Adriana and kicks her out of his house when he finds her talking to Elenace. Kleber reminds Adriana about his obligations. Ulysses is jealous when he sees Patrick with Fabiana. Lyris thanks Nicolau for not abandoning her. Otoniel finds a book in Mauricio's backpack and questions his grandson. And Adriana regrets when told by the clinic attendant that her interview was cancelled because she is a former inmate. This last scene, the interview cancelled due to prejudice, is one of the most powerful of the entire second phase. Adriana, who spent 6 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit, comes free and discovers that society's prejudice is more efficient in excluding people than any prison grid. She has qualifications, she has experience, she wants to work, and the only reason the interview is cancelled is because she was arrested. This social criticism is one of the most powerful marks of Walsir Carrasco and Claudia Sudo's training in this second phase. It is here that the Mundo Agora channel makes that special request that we make in total. We have a dream. To reach 10,000 subscribers on YouTube and ToTalk. This number and the monetization criterion that allows the channel to continue to exist with quality. Bringing this coverage every day, fast, detailed, behind the scenes, and good gossip before any other channel. Today, this is the request for the video. Click the subscribe button. That's a long way to go, but if God wants, we'll get there. who already signed up. Thank you so much. We always follow back those who follow us. Gancho. Pilar's blackmail is active. Tomorrow there is Adriana's disappointment with Pedro and a prejudice that will outrage Brazil. Emotional for Adriana this second phase. But now he gains a dimension of his own with this book detail. What book was this? What was he talking about? Why was it in Mauricio's backpack the way that made Otoniel want to question? One of the most commented theories among fans is that the book may have some connection to's mystery, Natalia Dill's character who has yet to have his story fully revealed. Otoniel still feels a lack of oxygen, confirmed by Saturday's chapter 47, and that feeling does not go away. The mystery of the tomb has not yet been solved. The explanation for who it fell and what that tomb means is still pending, and there are more elements of mystery unfolding next week. In chapter 48, Otoniel refuses to talk to Brigitte and Mrs. The refusal to talk to Brigitte is interesting because Brigitte and Pilar's daughter, and Otoniel, for everything Pilar did with Adriana, have no emotional disposition for this interaction. Butts persists. She is the counterpoint of light in a period of great darkness for this character. Tony Ramos is delivering in this second phase one of the most contained and at the same time densest performances of his career on Brazilian television. Otoniel is a man who has carried a lot. The pain of his trapped granddaughter, the forced departure from Arthur's house, the uncertainty about the family's future. And now he finds a book in Mauricio's backpack and questions it. Simple as that. But Tony Ramos makes this simple thing huge. But let's not forget what Mauricio has done positively. He encouraged Adriana to tell Pedro the reason for the departure. He is a constant and careful presence around the protagonist. This questioning about the book can be a moment of family tension, but it can also be the beginning of a revelation that the character himself may not even know he is carrying. Gancho. Otoniel found a book in Mauricio's backpack and his mystery remains unanswered, but he has a week of soap opera ahead of him that will have much more than that. Bruna will demand that Adriana stay away from Pedro. Carmita is getting involved with a mysterious man, and Pilar will directly threaten Adriana's family. How does the old woman intend to threaten the family? And what is Rosa going to do to protect them all? Part 7 has all the details. Part 7. Pilar threats Adriana's family and Rosa, part on top of the daughter. We got to part 7 here in the world now, and now we're going to talk about one of the most tense scenes that this second phase will deliver later this week. The one that proves that even after everything Pilar has done, she's still not satisfied. She wants more. She wants to make sure Adriana has nowhere to lean on. In this Friday's chapter 46, Pilar threatens Adriana's family. This is one of the village's most brutal moves in the second round, because since Adriana is free and promising revenge, Pilar decides to do what has always been her favorite strategy, threaten who the protagonist loves. It was like that with Pedro. It was like this with the attacks inside the prison, and now and with the family. But this time he has a defense that Pilar didn't expect. Rosa. In Saturday's chapter 47, Rosa threatens Pilar in order to protect Adriana's family. Rosa, lived by Tatiana Tiburcio, was that nurse who, in the first phase, refused to pass on information about Adriana's family to Pilar. Today she takes an even bigger step. She goes after her daughter as if threatening. This inversion, in which a girl who was in a passive refusal role now assumes an active, protective posture, is one of the hallmarks of Waltzir Carrasco's second phase training. Secondary characters are growing. They are no longer just support. They are agents. Rosa threatening Pilar and Lyris working at the casino and Ulysses. Nancy is a constant moral and effective presence for Adriana. Each of these women is becoming a valuable piece on the board in the second phase. And there's more bomb in chapter 46. Pedro tells Bruna that the watch she found is rare, and Gilda informs Bruna that the watch she found is fake. This is an arch that looks lateral but will reveal a lot about Carmita's tricks, experienced by Deborah Evelyn, and about the financial dynamics that exist within Pedro and Bruna's marriage. A rare watch, a fake watch, someone lied. And when Bruna finds out who lied and why, it's going to be yet another conflict in the existing pile. Carmita gets involved with a mysterious man. This scene from Saturday is one of the most intriguing of the week, because Carmita was always the character who controlled the relationships. She who chose what Bruna should do, she who orchestrated approaches, and now she herself has a mysterious involvement. Who is this man? What does he want? And is this relationship genuine, or is Carmita being manipulated the same way she manipulated others? Gancho. Pilar threatened Adriana's family, and Rosa went after her. Carmita has a new mystery. The clock is fake. And there's one more bombshell that Backstage confirms for next week, involving Nancy, a revelation about Arthur's death, and Adriana arriving at a lecture by Adamir. What is Adriana going to do in this talk? And what will she find out that will give her the ammo she'd been waiting for? Part 8 closes this historical chapter with everything. Part 8, Adriana at the Adamir gym. PE calls Adriana Brown and what's coming next week. We arrive at Part 8, the final stretch of Chapter 44 of Quem, Cuida, and here we close with the most explosive backstage bombs of next week. Because what comes in Chapters 48 to 53 is a sequence that will leave Brazil talking for months. Let's start with what might be the biggest emotional slip Pedro will commit in the second phase. Pedro calls Bruna by Adriana's name. That moment, confirmed for Monday's Chapter 48, is the kind of revelation that no marriage can handle without a falling out. Pedro will be in some situation with Bruna, probably in a moment of intimacy or argument, and will call her by Adriana's name. Bruna has already been to the shelter. She's already seen Pedro with Adriana. He will already demand that Adriana stay away, and now her husband himself will call her by the name of another one. Nanda Marcus will have to deliver here a Bruna who is on the edge of her own madness. And Chase Wade is going to show Pedro that he is so immersed in Adriana that his sub can no longer separate the two. In the same chapter, 48, Adriana decides to attend Adamir's lecture. This is the realization of the revenge strategy that Adriana had been preparing. She doesn't go there as a nurse. She goes there as an agent. With open eyes, with thoughtful questions, she's probably already gathering information about how Adamir operates publicly, how he positions himself, who are the people around him who might be possible access points for the evidence she needs. And in Tuesday's Chapter 49 comes one of the most anticipated scenes of the entire second phase. Adriana accuses Adamir of having bought witnesses to her. That's the most direct statement Adriana makes to date, in public, or at least in Adamir's ear, that she knows what he did and that she won't stop until she proves it. Dan Stulbach will have to deliver an Adamir here, who for the first time receives the accusation right in the face of the person who was the victim. Not from Pedro, not from Elenice. Adriana herself, still in Chapter 49. Pedro calls Bruna by Adriana's name. Rosa threatens Pilar to protect Adriana's family. Nancy tells Adriana that she found Pedro and she meets her friends Nancy and Lyris. There are 3 women who met inside a prison, who experienced things they shouldn't have experienced, and who are now outside building something new. This reunion will be one of the most exciting moments of the entire second phase. In Chapter 50, Adriana tells Nancy that she found Pedro and confesses that she still loves him. Adriana says she hasn't given up on her revenge. Bruna demands that Adriana stay away from Pedro, and Pilar and Adriana meet in the beauty salon. New confrontation, new space, same war. The soap opera Quem, Cuida, written by Walsir Carrasco and Claudia Sudo, with artistic direction by Amora Mautner, script by Bruno Segadilla, Julia Lax, Martha Mendonça, and Wendell Bendelac. General direction by Caetano Caruso, and production by Estudios Globo. It is in the most explosive phase of the second phase, and World Now will be here every day covering every detail. Do you think Pedro will have the courage to end his marriage to Bruna to be with Adriana? Or will he continue trying to honor both commitments at the same time and losing both? Comment here, yes, we'll have courage and we'll end, or nay, oh, we'll continue along the way. And thank you so much for staying with me from start to finish, 8 full parts here in the World Now. You are the reason this channel exists. See you tomorrow with Chapter 45.